Greetings, welcome back, everyone. We're going to talk about Vietnam's role in the global supply chain. And today we're with Guillaume Rondan. How are you, Guillaume?
Very happy to be here, mate. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How about a 30-second quick introduction?
Yeah, so I'm Guillaume Rondan. I'm the founder of Move to Asia. So we are basically a company located in Ho Chi Minh City, and we help with market entry and sourcing. So we have the back office team who can take care of the supplier search, so finding the right suppliers, do due diligence on your behalf, and also having the QC team who can visit the factories on different stage of the production. And then very happy to be here to discuss about Vietnam at the moment, who is quite hot and under the radar.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about kind of the trends and the excitement that's happening in the maybe last 5 or 8 years since you've been living in Vietnam?
Yeah, so I think we started the journey together, right? And then you were having 5, 6 years ago a job as the local representative of a trading company in China. And then you also were part of this growing development and seeing how the country has changed dramatically. And from my own perspective, I also see that factories years after year got equipped with more, increasing the standard, increasing the machinery, being well able to present themselves and to introduce themselves as potential partners. And then recently you also saw this switch of diversification. So SMEs before and then big groups were only relying on one sourcing country. And more you see SMEs who are trying to diversify their supply chain, so they will not only try to look into Chinese-made goods, but they will be looking to neighboring countries such as Thailand, such as India, and Vietnam is also getting more and more attention. We can maybe go through some of the product categories. This morning I was attending one of the trade shows in Ho Chi Minh City, and it highlighted the growth of Vietnam for garments. And right now, for instance, Vietnam is the #2 largest garment exporter. So there is a couple of industries like that where Vietnam become like one country now that is really that has recognition worldwide for their products, and especially for export market to US or to Europe.
Okay, so you mentioned textiles is something that Vietnam does well. What are some other industries that you see kind of on Vietnam's radar that are exports?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Vin. So I think Vietnam is known for a couple of key verticals. So we mentioned textile. Most of the complex and technical fabric will still be imported. So Vietnam for garment, at least, will be with cut and sew manufacturers, right? So it's going to be manufacturers that will be able to work on the technical specifications of the client and do OEM projects. Then you have another product category that is furniture, and we can think about the indoor or outdoor type of furniture. Home decor as well, so with the ancestral and traditional art from Vietnamese makers. It used to be artisan villages that used to be doing that for generation and generation. And this is a type of category that used to be done in China probably 15, 20 years ago, but because it's quite labor intensive, now China doesn't do it anymore, and now all those handicrafts are often coming from Vietnam. Then we can also include metal manufacturing, so with all the welding, this is also quite labor intensive. So as soon as you have a country with a very competitive labor force, we can think 30 to 40% lower than in China, then it becomes interesting to consider it as a prime sourcing destination. And now probably the fourth product category could be footwear. So here also Nike, Adidas having many of their sourcing partners in Vietnam, and most of the footwear products are actually made in Vietnam for overseas markets. I know you, Vin, you had also a strong experience, and then you used to be doing a lot of garden tools. Can you talk about a bit also about all the outdoor patios and then tools and machinery that you were also working before, and then you were sourcing and manufacturing them in Vietnam?
Yeah, so my category when I was sourcing in Vietnam was home and garden, tools and manufacturing. And so we saw some success there. In fact, a lot of the products, the hand tools, were imported from China. So there were still Chinese made goods like drills or battery operated hand tools, things like that. So those still came from China. But what Vietnam does fairly well is, for example, if you can make or produce a Chinese product in Vietnam. And so I oversaw some of those projects, like hose reel for the garden, and those types of products. So more maybe low skill types of products that we could make in Vietnam. But there's always challenges, and we compare to China. So maybe right off the bat, what do you think are the big differences between China and Vietnam, just from a broad stroke?
I think that's where things become complicated, because until now we draw a beautiful picture of Vietnam, but actually when you approach a sourcing plan, things are not going that smoothly, and sometimes you need to get a bit hands-on on projects and then do extra things that you won't do if you are, for instance, used to be sourcing in China. One easy example, maybe the access of the information. In Vietnam, you don't have a directory as for niche as Alibaba, listing numerous numbers of suppliers in a key product category. And here, if you just go to Yellow Pages or other directories, you may not be able to access to the right information. Maybe companies won't have an actual website in English, and very often they don't even have a website at all. So they'll be relying on exchanging business cards at trade show or sharing information into Zalo groups. So Zalo is the equivalent of WeChat in Vietnam. You need to implement different strategies if you want to find suppliers. Then after that you have, and then you will face language barrier, because here in Vietnam, not all the factories are having English speaking staff. When you do touring into factories, very often key representative of those manufacturers won't really be able to communicate directly with the end client. That's how middlemen and then intermediaries sometimes help into closing deals. So you will have agents that will be very visible here, and that will help to put the right client in front of the right factory. So you have those things that are not maybe anymore done in China, and in Vietnam you need to approach the market with a different way. What have been your challenges that you faced when you were sourcing companies on behalf of your Chinese company before, Vin?
Yeah, you touched on a little bit about it, Guillaume. I think the language barriers sometimes is a problem. I know English, for China in decades, they have a team. They usually have, college graduates that speak English fairly well, definitely the younger generation, whereas Vietnam, it's a little bit behind, it's lacking, and they're not so sophisticated. A lot of the companies, they don't have SEO or a website that's optimized or that's efficient and that's updated. So we'll see that kind of issue. And then I think, just like you mentioned, some of the training, some of the staff, they might not be as helpful, and then you might not be able to find them because, like you said, Alibaba or it's quite easy to look up a directory online and find your exact product that you're looking for in China, whereas Vietnam really doesn't have that. So I think those are the big issues. And then the other thing is the common mistake people think is they think they can get the exact same items in Vietnam as you can in China, which is definitely not the case. Vietnam is only 1/10 of the size of China. The workforce has been trained differently. And then China has a longer development history, 20, 30 years. And so they have a big head start, whereas Vietnam is maybe, I would say, 5 or 10 years they started to move up in the manufacturing world. So those are some of the definite differences.
So you touch a very important point, Vin. It's doing business in Asia versus doing it in the West won't be the same. I think in China they may be more direct into their approach, but when you go to Vietnam, you have a lot of manners and then cultural differences that will be highlighted. For instance, if you visit a potential supplier or client, you will have a lot of different protocols, and then you need to treat the person accordingly. And you have this non-verbal thing, for instance, inviting people to restaurants, having a type of relationship that is outside of the work, that will have to be well explained to foreigners, because sometimes they may not just know about the actual codes here. So there is a lot of things to learn that are not that cannot be teach easily, and you need to go again hands-on and be proactively taking the direction if you are looking to source in Vietnam. For instance, go to tours, go to exhibitions, go to a trade show, that you can really somehow shake hands with potential suppliers here and see how things are turning.
Now, what advice would you give, Gabe? You touched on a little bit about it already, but for example, someone is interested in Vietnam. Maybe they've sourced in China for a few years, but now with the Trump tariffs, is getting more expensive. Items are getting more expensive, so they hear about Vietnam. So, what is your advice for that person to maybe learn about Vietnam and actually buy products from there?
I think there are a roadmap that people can follow. First, they should try to visit Vietnam themselves. So if they can plan a trip here, in March there is the furniture fair. So there are a month with a lot of trade show. I was just today at one apparel trade show here. So by visiting those trade shows, and during the year there will be a couple of months where within a week or two you can visit 2 to 3 trade shows sometime. It can give you a very good understanding about what's the market capacity, what are the different players, what are the abilities to manufacturers, for instance, to do product development. And that's key, because if you are very used to China, where you have a lot of one-stop shop, you go to a manufacturer and they have the R&D team, they can do sample within, for instance, 7 days. Here in Vietnam, it may not be the case. So you may have to provide them tech pack, meaning you need to work beforehand with a designer, with engineer yourself, or you need to have a first experience into doing it in China. Then after that, you can use Vietnam as a contractor country, meaning you can provide them everything that they need, tech pack, technical specifications of the product, and then they can be working on that. But if you expect the factory to have the engineer team to help you to design the product, it may not be as easy as it is in China.
Very good. Now, in terms of the infrastructure, you've been living in Vietnam for 6+ years. How are the ports, the roads, the shipping, the warehouses, the trucking, all of that? How does that play a role, and what is your assessment?
Vietnam can be decomposed into 2 big parts. You have the northern area where this is very close to China, okay, and then you have the southern part. There is a lot to talk about that, but just if we consider those 2 main areas, you have in the north more Chinese-owned factories. So the advantages of manufacturing in the north is that you can more easily access to raw material that will be imported from China, versus in the south you will have more a cosmopolitan environment. So you have more FDI, so foreign-owned companies. In terms of agents as well, sourcing companies, there will be more in the south. So it's more easy when you want to do business as a foreigner to set up your company in the south, or to work with partners in southern Vietnam. If you are used to do business with China, you can also more easily transition the supply chain into the northern part of Vietnam. Then you may find Chinese-owned companies that may have, for instance, sub-entities in the northern part of Vietnam. Then related to the logistics and the infrastructure, then you have 2 major ports. One will be in the north in Hai Phong with a deep sea port, and then one will be in the south in Cat Lai. So it's very close to the manufacturing zone as well. So if you need any transportation, you can quite easily make the trucking between those manufacturing zones to the final port where the goods will be shipped out of Vietnam.
Okay, very good. No, so that's a good kind of assessment, summary of the manufacturing and sourcing from Vietnam. Any last tidbit, advice, or suggestion that you'd like to share?
So I think, Vin, for new entrant, people who are either just started a business from scratch, they want to source from Vietnam, or they are already doing something and working with Chinese suppliers, I think you can still try to implement an online strategy. Meaning that before you even come to Vietnam, as I emphasized earlier, this is very important to do this step, but beforehand, you can still go online to do a supplier search by yourself. Alibaba is still able to provide you a certain type of resources. It doesn't mean that it's going to provide you a lot of choices in terms of manufacturers, but you can still get a first sense of pricing, what are the key industries in Vietnam, as well as key contact. If you go through Alibaba, make sure that you will be dealing with the manufacturer itself, right? Don't go with trading company except if you just want to buy a standard product and then you are okay to pay a premium because you'll be buying from a trading company. So if you can find the right manufacturer through Alibaba, you can get a sense of placing a test order and seeing how the process goes. And after that, after you have a first success story, meaning that you find a product market fit, you are able to sell the product that you bought through Alibaba, then at this time you can really plan something more long term and then really go to Vietnam, trying to find new partners, try to build a certain relationship with those new partners and find how you can really get the best of Vietnam. So meaning really go deep, screening different suppliers, probably using the service of a sourcing agency who can also help you to get some good contact. And after that, think about the long term of your project. So also trying to get a local team in country who can take care of the QC aspect, for instance. And if your project really kickstart and you get good traction, how can you also develop your catalogs and then your inventory, and then also try obviously to look for a country that you have already familiarities or some first contact to grow your business accordingly. What do you think, Vietnam? Do you think people should approach through an online strategy or offline, or what are the things that you would add to close this conversation?
Yeah, I think I'd probably have to do both. I think your initial research, you'll probably go online, check out videos, check out content from Vietnam. And then if you're committed, I would highly recommend reaching out to sourcing companies or someone on the ground that can help you navigate some of those manufacturers and resources because he or she would definitely be able to key you in on important happenings or trade shows or make those contacts for you. So I think it's well worth the price and that strategy. Okay, Guillaume, thank you very much. That was a good summary and some advice and tidbits. So how do people reach out to you if they're looking to make some contact in Vietnam?
Thanks, Vin. It was a pleasure to discuss about this topic and then highlighting Vietnam on the global scale. I think people can just simply Google my name, Guillaume Rondan, on Google, and then can easily find information and then reach me out through either email or LinkedIn.
Okay, thanks, Guillaume. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.